Afternoon, Wade Ullman with Kuhn Krause. I've got my co-part, Jason Weiskircher, with me from Wisconsin. And like I tell everybody else, you can hold it against him. So, but he did make the trek, so that's awesome. Today we've got a full lineup of tillage equipment that we're going to talk about. We're basically going to go from a heavier primary tillage to less aggressive, more of your secondary, and then into strip till, vertical till is kind of how we'll end the day. So the first piece that we have here is the Dominator, and it's basically designed to take out compaction. It's also designed to slice residue, slice root balls, and I'll kind of walk you through that, and then through the back it'll mix. So if you take a look at the design, we've got the front coulters, which are 25 inches in diameter, and we do run live hydraulics with that, which basically we run continuous flow through this port. You can adjust the depth of those coulters that you want to run them at. So a lot of times people will ask, well, why do I need coulters on a machine when I've got a chopping corn head? But you got to remember, it's not only your above ground residue, but it's your below ground residue that you got to be concerned with. So you take a look at that, and even if you've got a chopping corn head, what I recommend is we run about 3 to 4 inches deep, so we get down into the crowns of those roots, and we start that degradation process by cutting the crowns of those roots. The nice thing with it is you got a good visual from the cab where you can see how deep you're running. If you're not running deep enough, basically just add more pressure. If you're running too deep and you're running too deep, what you'll see is you have slabs will come up into your C-shanks, and that'll, over time, will plug that machine. So it's just a matter of dialing those in for the field conditions, whether it's wet, dry. So you take a look at, from the coulters back, you take a look at the length of the frame. It's a very long frame, so we've got a lot of room for residue flow. So the original design was designed for running in non-chop stocks. We've got a heavy parabolic shank in the front, and it's on 36-inch spacing. So you got a 3,000-pound point load on that shank. So it's going to stay, it's going to grab, it's going to stay in the ground, and it's going to start fracturing that subsoil. We want to run that about 1.5 inches, 2 inches below that hard pan. Generally, hard pans are around that 8-inch depth, 9-inch from field traffic. So you're going to run it right in that 10 to 11-inch range. Generally, just check your hard pans as far as the actual running depth that you're going to do. So as we go through the machine, the second set of ranks is our Chisel Shanks, and that is a 2,500-pound point load. So basically we're doing our heavy lifting, I say, in the front of the machine, and then we're doing our finish through the back of the machine. We are running a 7-inch wing point on the machine, and that is that special composite, which is going to give you 2 to 3 times the life. And in talking to some farmers that have ran them, 2 to 3 times the life might be a little bit short. So it's got some real long longevity to it in hard soils, loose soils, dry soils. So it's a really nice innovation they've come out with in the last, what, Jason?
Oh, it's been 3 or 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. So and then basically the back of it is where I always say the key to the machine is. So if you look at a lot of the designs out in the market today, they're trying to do this on the front of the machine. So when you're trying to cut into virgin soil, it's very hard to maintain depth, especially as those blades wear. So you're kind of doing your mixing in the front, and then you're pulling that stuff back up through your shanks. We're doing the opposite. We're cutting, and then we're lifting, shattering, and we're going to capture a lot of more root balls because this is on an 18-inch spacing. So the market today is on a 24-inch spacing. So if you do some quick math, probably 20%.
I don't know, I'm from Wisconsin, math's hard.
Yeah. 20% more root balls that you're going to capture, that you're going to basically bring up, and then we can start to process it through the back. So if you take a look at the back of the design, now that we've got the soil loosened, we're rolling it inward and we're rolling it outward, basically like a reverse tandem disc. And what that's going to do agronomically is it's going to take that residue now and it's going to mix it evenly through the soil profile because we're mixing it in and mixing it out. So when we run this out here, if we had a lot of residue, we could dig through that and show that. And basically the more that is evenly mixed in the soil profile, the better it's going to break down into springtime. And then we've got the crumbling reel to finish. This does have 80 pounds of downforce to it in the down position. If it does get extremely wet, we can basically hydraulically lift that right from the cab of the tractor. One of the new designs that we're running, we'll be coming out with on the round bar reels is a solid round bar reel. So that'll be something that we'll have with the next generation of Dominators. So, anything you would like to add, Jason?
I just always like to talk about the difference. When you look at a Dominator and you compare it to the competitors out there, where everybody's trying to do so much of that tillage ahead of the shanks, that's always firm, hard soil. You've got to cut and mix all that residue on the front of the machine, where the Dominator has really built off. We're going to cut that residue to get it through the machines, let those shanks really do that heavy work, and then get real consistent incorporation on the rear of the machine. It's just really a very consistent machine, and it's considerably different than the way everybody else does it, and we've just been kind of the class of the field for a long time.
And when you see the finish out there, guys, it's going to be much more level than what you see with other machines because of the back and the leveling component to it, and the reel that really pounds down those root balls. So something to kind of keep in mind as we get out in the field. The other thing I just will mention to you before we get started is this is on it's on hydraulics. So you may get into a situation where they're running too deep, or say you're in bean ground, you don't want to be that aggressive. Right from the cab of the tractor, we can lift that, and we're just not going to be aggressive as far as mixing, so it's going to leave more of that soil up on top. So then I think he's going to illustrate the rear reel. And guys, that rear reel lift, that's a nice option. We didn't have it before. So basically you just had to take those reels off when it was real wet. So now we got the ability to lift it.
And typically on the rear, we want to run that in float as well, just to allow for an appropriate amount. I mean, it will follow the ground. It's got good weight to it. It's really going to do a good job of incorporating. You know, it is hydraulically positionable, so depending on your depth, your residue condition or whatnot, you can change that position as well. If you've got a different condition that you have to change your spots there a little bit. So.
And the final thing I'll just mention is about well, we offer basically 4 sizes on the 48, 56, 57 model. We basically go from a 7 shank, which takes about 250 horse minimum, up to a 13 shank, which takes about 500 minimum on that. We also offer, as a final thought, a 4860, which is on 24-inch spacing. So if 18-inch spacing is too narrow for you, we can go a little bit wider if that's good enough for you. Very similar design, and then we still run the 25-inch coulters, 24-inch spacing, but with that spacing, since it's wider, we are running the heavier shanks, front and back, 3,000 pound.
All parabolics.
All parabolic. So what we're trying to do is get more of that soil up, get more shatter with that wider spacing, and then basically we got the discs at the back. So the question is, do I want to do more per pass than 18-inch spacing, or 24-inch spacing is good enough, and I can work it a little bit wider. So, shall we run?
I'm good with it. There. But if you start comparing to some of the other competitors and whatnot, we will yank a lot more root balls.
But even look at it, it's been pumped.
Yeah.
So we've introduced air into it. It's going to really help with breakdown. I'll step over here so we don't get too dusty. All right, we're back after we ran the machine. So a few things I just wanted to point out to you. If you take a look at those front coulters I was talking about, look what it does to that root ball. So now it's sliced that root ball, we've plucked it up, and then you take a look at even how it's starting to clean those root balls out through those conditioning discs and through those reels. Another one. But you take a look at that through the soil profile, again, not a lot of residue, but as we dig in that, look at the even distribution in that roll. We don't have those hot spots where we're rolling soil onto a mat or a fluff. So again, we don't have a lot of residue out here, but the concept will remain the same as you get into regular field corn. But take a look at the finish of it, how smooth it is, and our clod sizes are managed. The more we can do, guys, in the fall to get to seed bed prep in the spring, the further ahead we are. And that's the real advantage with this machine is they say it pulls hard, but it pulls hard because it's doing more per pass. And they talk about, you know, the working width. Well, if you're doing more per pass, we're saving ourselves time into the future. So it's an environment like this, Jason, do you think you got a 2-pass this?
Oh, this is 1-pass finishable.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have those big valleys that we're trying to level where you got to do a second pass. In the old days, in the DMI days, what they talked about was, well, we want to blow that soil out, so we got some high tops that are going to dry out, and it's going to get us out in the field quicker. But the fallacy behind that is that what's happening down off those hills, it stays cold and it stays wet. So you take your field cultivator through that one pass, you got a cold spot, wet spot, warm spot, cold spot. So you got a lot of inconsistency, and that's why you need to run a field cultivator twice. With this type of a finish, we're not worried about that. We've got the consistency to run it one time and plant. The final thing I'll note on it, you won't see it out here, but it's one of those tools that when you finish with your field and you drive away, it looks like it's shaggy. And why is it shaggy, Jason?
That's a good question.
I was testing them. That's the biggest root ball I can find out here. Remember the other machines, how do they process material once they drag it up? Basically what they're doing with it is they just got some closing discs out the back. They really can't condition the root balls or the clods down. So as you drive away from those fields, they look good and black, but you get out in the field and you've got big boulders out there. And again, you got to try to work to process that in the springtime. So
Shaggy, huh?
Shaggy.
Okay.
It must be a Minnesota term.
Must be. Lakeville.
Our Lakeville term.